Good morning, and we are live. Coffee with Rich. Today, I'll be joined by retired Lieutenant Colonel Jay Land, and in just a moment, I'm going to ask Jay to introduce himself. But before I do, let me get set up. As we're waiting on folks to jump on this morning, you're definitely going to want to like and share this content. We're going to be talking about some very interesting things in the threat that North Korea plays, and I'm really excited to have Jay on the show. If you are just joining us for the first time, my name is Rich Brown. I'm the co-host and co-founder of the American Warrior Society and the American Warrior Show, which is America's #1 self-defense podcast. You can find the American Warrior Show and all of our previous content anywhere where you consume podcasts. If you're joining me today live on Coffee with Rich on Facebook, thank you for joining me. If you're joining me later in a replay, I appreciate it also. If you're joining me on YouTube, that's right, Coffee with Rich now has a YouTube channel. I'm excited to have you. Looks like we got 7 folks already on. Please like and share, guys. We are joined once again. This is the first time on the show by Lieutenant Colonel Jay Land, and he is coming to us from Korea, from the Korean Peninsula. I won't say where, not important. But it is very late where he is, and I want to be respectful of this time. So we're going to jump into the show in just a moment. Before I do, I want to give you guys an opportunity to share this with folks that are going to need this content. I also want to talk to you about some of our sponsors. As always, we have Appalachian Standards, makers of the finest CBD products money can buy, growing craft hemp in the mountains around Asheville, North Carolina. We also sponsored by Century Martial Arts, makers of the Bob XL. If you're not working your striking routine, why not? If you can use Bob, you can shoot Bob, you can stab Bob, you can put him in a gi and choke the crap out of Bob. Bob is an amazing training tool, as well as the Cool Fire Trainer, because that's what we're all about here at the American Warrior Society, American Warrior Show, and Coffee with Rich, is training you guys to win the fight, when and if it ever finds you. And the Cool Fire Trainer is an amazing tool to utilize today when ammunition prices are absolutely worth their weight in gold. Jay, thanks for coming on this morning, sir.
Hey, it is absolutely my privilege to be here. Rich, thank you so much for putting this on. It is always a fantastic opportunity to be able to talk to your audience and share a little bit about what we're doing. Some of us kind of out on the fringes of what some people might consider as society.
Yeah, I can't wait, man. I've been very, very excited and looking forward to this. Let's say good morning to TC Fuller. He is on. He says, good morning, lads. JD Helly is on. Good morning, sir. Tiny is on from Brunswick, Georgia. Good morning, Tiny. Lisa Brown, my lovely bride, is on this morning. She says, good morning, everyone. Mike from Michigan, coin number 1122. If you want to know what a coin number is, check out AmericanWarriorSociety.com. Find out if becoming a member and getting access to all of our self-defense content is the right thing for you. Dan is on. Good morning, coin number 1968. Shout out from Flowery Branch, Georgia. John is on from Yukon, Oklahoma. Donald is on. Vince is on. Will Parker. Roger Barber says, good morning, sir. Good morning, Roger. We served in the Marines together. Super Fire, brother. Jeff Brown is on. Good morning. Brett, Elke, Daphne, everyone is on this morning. Please like and share. Brett says, Cool Fire is great, but changing the striker tips and the Cool Fire is a real challenge. Yeah. It's like any new technology, man. It has its moments. But the good more outweighs the bad, definitely. Johnny is on. Good morning, Johnny. Jay, I guess the first question I wanted to ask you, sir, was TC Fuller always a paragon of masculinity and soldierly virtue?
So, Special Agent Fuller and I have known each other for many, many years. We met when I was a very young and confident young lieutenant in the Explosive Ordnance Disposal School. And, I got my EOD badge before TC got his. And TC came out of the schoolhouse. I already had my badge. He tried to tell me to come to attention. I told TC that non-badge wearers should not speak to EOD badge wears in such a such a manner, and it all went downhill from there. Uh, but thankfully, about 18 months later, TC came to my unit as the commander, and I've got to tell you, I've never found a better leader, a better mentor than TC Fuller. We started back at zero, and he really taught me a lot of life lessons about what it means to be a leader of people. And then he left, and I became the commander. So I am truly grateful to TC Fuller. He is truly one of my life's mentors, and I can't say enough nice things about him. But he's listening, so his head is probably about this big right now. But I love you, TC Fuller.
I love you too, TC. Good morning. Guile from the Philippines over in your neck of the woods, Jay, says, good morning, Rich. Good morning, Colonel Land. Good morning, everyone. Always great joining you guys. Great to have you guys. Please like and share. Let's see. The first question, Jay, is right out of the gate. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
I was born and raised in Tennessee. Really did not know what I wanted to do growing up. I just knew I wanted to go to college. I joined the Army. I enlisted as a young E2. I was offered an EOD scholarship, or excuse me, an ROTC scholarship. And then thankfully, one of my instructors told me about EOD. Hey, if you go EOD, you can go blow things up and play volleyball and drink beer all day. And it really struck a nerve. So I went EOD, and I really found a life's path. I go from being a young EOD to lieutenant to now working in Korea, advising the Republic of Korea Army and the U.S. Forces Korea on all things counter weapons of mass destruction. So, the little things you hear in life often lead to big opportunities. And I hate to give TC some credit, but TC really encouraged me, and TC made me realize that there are a lot of things in life that if you take the opportunity and you push yourself and strive hard, you can achieve it. So now, I live and work in the Republic of Korea. I work to directly mitigate the North Korean nuclear and counter or the chemical threat. It's just an incredible life. I don't know what else to say.
Well, Jay, thanks again for coming on the show. And if you're just joining us, we're going to be talking about obviously utilizing Jay's expertise to kind of get a window into what's going on the Korean Peninsula and if the threat is real or not. And if so, what does that threat really look like? This is going to be a rare glimpse into something that a lot of Americans are not exposed to. And I'm really excited to have Jay on the show. Chad is on this morning. Matt is on. Jeff Day, he says, good morning. Coin number 1933. Alan Kelly from occupied Virginia. Lots of folks on this morning. Please like and share. We are just getting started. So an EOD tech, for those that don't know, explain a little bit about what EOD does and what exactly that pipeline is all about.
We counter explosive ordnance hazards, whether it be a hand grenade, whether it be an artillery round like a 155 millimeter artillery round, or whether it be a nuclear weapon. We are the first line of defense to ensure that we can go in and mitigate the hazards, whether it's against our military personnel or civilian population, mitigate the threat, eliminate the explosive hazard so that we can safely remove the piece of ordnance and get it away and destroy it in an alternate location. We're the bomb techs. We're the guys that you see in some of the crazy movies out there that you've seen. I'm not sure. I don't remember the one with Sandra Bullock in it, the one from Boston, or Hurt Locker. And I hate to mention Hurt Locker. A lot of my EOD brothers will cringe. But we're the guys that go down, and gals, a lot of great female EOD techs. We're the ones that will go down on a piece of explosive ordnance, and we will find a way to defeat that in order to protect lives and property and equipment.
For those that don't know, I actually almost became an EOD tech. I spent the first 6 years in the infantry and the Marines, and I was like, man, I really don't want to do any more infantry. I need to get the heck out of this. So I applied for counter intel EOD, and I think it was something else anyway. And I got accepted EOD. I had the GT score and all that other crap. I went down and had an interview with an EOD warrant officer. He approved it, played around in the suits and stuff. And it's what I wanted to do. So the day I was supposed to re-enlist for EOD in my school seat, I'm like, you know what? I'm getting out. And I did. I got out of the Marine Corps and went and became a police officer. And then ultimately, obviously, went back in and retired. But the point of saying that is, it's something that I thought was really cool. It's a small community. They get to play with a lot of really neat stuff. And my friend said, we're instructors together. And he said, hey, man, are you taking that EOD slot? Did you re-enlist? I'm like, no. He goes, well, what are they going to do with that school seat? I'm like, I don't know, man. Go talk to the career planner if you want it. So he went over there and talked to the career planner and became an EOD guy. And then later, when we went to the basic school at Quantico together as warrant officers, he was there as an EOD officer. So he made a career out of my school seat.
Well, you may not realize it, but I think it was my it was my first tour in Iraq. I had went over as just a plain logistics officer, because in the Army they will kind of bump you back and forth. I was called in by my colonel. He's like, I've got a special job for you. I'm like, what, do you want me to make PowerPoint slides? He said, no, I'm sending you out to 2nd Marine. We're attaching you to 2nd Marine. So I lived the second half of my first tour with 2nd Marine, and I traveled the entire western area of Iraq with the 2nd Marine. Fallujah hit Ramadi, Haditha Dam. So I spent a lot of time with my Marine brothers, and it was an absolute outstanding experience.
How cool, man. We'll have to talk, see if you know some of the EOD friends. Okay, we got 30 folks joining us live. Please like and share. We are just getting started. So you now focus on countering weapons of mass destruction on the Korean Peninsula, counter proliferation and elimination. For us lay folks, Jay, what is counter proliferation and elimination of weapons of mass destruction?
Proliferation is nothing more than trying to propagate the spread of weapons of mass destruction, whether it be through the cyber means, whether it be through putting nuclear materials of concern on the back of a donkey and running it from the North Korean border through the Chinese border. We work to ensure that we are able to contain Kim Jong-un and his regime, prevent them from spreading and propagating materials, expertise, and knowledge to minimize the threat of a weapons of mass destruction incident, not only here within the Korean theater of operations, the KTO, but across the world.
Is North Korea like a legit threat? Should we take that seriously?
Absolutely. Absolutely. While we do not have a refined number of weapon systems that they have, we do know that they have nuclear materials of concern. We do know that they have developed warheads. And we do know that they have the genesis of creating other nuclear threats. So the more that we work from this side to interdict their ability to spread this information, we know that they've worked directly with Iran. We know that they have worked directly with other countries of interest. The harder we work here to ensure that they are unable to spread this information, this knowledge, this material, the safer we are, whether it's in Europe or America.
And I believe just in the last 24 hours, I've seen satellite images that seem to indicate that they are
Yes.
mining plutonium. Is that correct?
You know, there is on open sources is showing that they are working and in fact to continue to develop their capabilities. I won't speak to anything on the non-open source side, but if you're seeing on open source, there's reason to believe that they are actively working to defeat our ability to defeat their ability, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I also read another article in preparation for this today, Jay, that, and I forget what the source was, but it was always some open source intelligence. That's certainly all I have access to these days. But I was going to say that they have stolen like 1.3 or 1.4 billion dollars through their cyber crimes activities in order to further their ambitions.
You know, I would not be surprised. You know, it's just like any other criminal enterprise. You know, there are people, you know, there are two types of people in the world, as far as I'm concerned. There are the types of people that wake up every day and figure out what can I do to work hard for my family and to go out and legitimately earn a living for my family, whether it's delivering groceries, you know, and as we live through the COVID threat, um, you know, delivering groceries is a critical thing for people across the world. Um, whether you look at people that are waking up every day, can I deliver groceries? Can I deliver the mail? Can I go do something that benefits society? On the other side of the spectrum, we have people that wake up every day that try and figure out how to beat this system, how to use a criminal method to get ahead in the world. So it would not surprise me at all to believe that the North Koreans are working very hard on a daily basis to black market money, to find criminal ways to fund themselves. And one of those ways is to proliferate proliferate weapons of mass destruction to any area of threats to the United States. Sadly.
Yeah, that's exactly true. Johnny King says, can you speak about the possible nuke detection activity in North Korea in today's news?
Um, I, there are many, many ways that the United States and our allies, the Five Eyes, use to detect potential weapons of mass destruction, proliferation, and use. I can't and will not speak specifically to those, but we have a wide range of abilities to detect and understand how our threats are using that against us. Thankfully, I mean, there's people much smarter than I that are able to develop systems that, in fact, give us the ability to detect proliferation and potential use. Thankfully.
Yeah, thankfully. Amen to that. When you look at the spectrum of threats that North Korea poses to the United States, Jay, what is the biggest and or most likely in your world?
That's a very big question. Um, you know, and able to, in my opinion, and please understand, I do not speak on behalf of the United States government. It's just me,
Mm-hmm.
just civilian Jay. I've retired, so I'm speaking on my opinion, not anything having to do with the U.S. government. Um, our biggest, um, we we must be able to prevent them from developing a delivery method. They have the raw fundamentals of of developing a significant um, warhead. We must continue to work to develop the ability to stymie their ability to deliver it. You can, if you got 1,000 pounds of TNT, that's pretty powerful. But if you cannot use that anywhere else, it's useless. So we must continue to develop the ability to defeat their ability to deliver that. And I think, if you look, we have the THAAD system here, the terminal high altitude anti delivery method, which can and will help us prevent them from delivering a warhead to us. I think that's critical. We must prevent their delivery piece. My opinion.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. You can have a bomb, but if you can't get it, if you can't reach the United States with it, then
Yeah,
we feel somewhat safe. The minute that they can put us in range, then all bets are
absolutely.
off. Yeah. When you look at
Absolutely.
the threats, Jay, of whether it's chemical, biological, nuclear, radiological, is there one threat that kind of keeps you more awake at night than another?
You kind of broke up
Oh,
for just a second. How about repeating?
yeah. What I was saying, Jay, is when you look at the threat North Korea poses on the chemical side, biological side, nuclear or radiological side of the threat, is there any one of those that worries you more than another?
Um, you know, Being in this position, um, truthfully, the chemical piece worries. As we, right now we are in the uh, we are at the very first stages of our command post combined command post training exercise, where we really war game how a North Korea versus South Korea fight works out. Um, when you consider the artillery that is arrayed against us, along with the chemical and biological capabilities they have, I would, again, me, Jayland, civilian, I predict that they will launch a huge, if it comes down to, an attack from north to south, they will launch a huge chemical weapon attack against the south. So that really it 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 it, it it demands that we are able to meet the chemical fight here in the South to stall their attack and be able to fight through their attack and then move north. So I would think that the chemical piece worries me most because the nuclear, once Kim Jong Un, again, in my opinion, and I can't stress that enough, I'm speaking as a private citizen, not as a representative of the government. Um, I truly believe that KJU will reserve the nuclear option until the later stages of the phases of combat. In other words, he's going to try and lay down a chemical threat against us here in the South to stall our operations and try and prevent us from moving north. If we move too far north, if we get too close to Pyongyang, I predict that that is when he would, in fact, launch a nuclear, tactical nuclear attack, or perhaps launch a strategic attack towards the United States in an effort to back us off. But again, my opinion, not the government.
Absolutely. And if you're just joining us this morning on Coffee with Rich and this Friday morning, March the 5th, we're joined by retired Lieutenant Colonel Jay Land. And Jay Land is coming to us this morning from Korea and South Korea specifically. And Jay is sharing with us his work on counter-nuclear proliferation on the Korean Peninsula. And of course, he's speaking for himself this morning. I want to talk specifically briefly about the USS Pueblo. And the reason I want to talk just briefly about it, Jay, I don't know what your thoughts are on it, but most Americans are completely unaware. Well, most Americans don't even know who won the Civil War. But if you talk to them about the USS Pueblo, they have no idea that it is the only ship in the U.S. Navy that is still on the commission roster, but is currently being held captive. Who is it being held captive by? North Korea. It is on display currently in Pyongyang. And most Americans have absolutely no idea that technically we're still in a state of war with North Korea. I don't think there's anything more than just some sort of armistice or ceasefire. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, we are technically still at war with North Korea. An armistice was put in place, but an armistice is not, in fact, a peace treaty. An armistice is, in fact, a diplomatic tool that we will quit shooting at each other. So, over the years, there have been several attacks by the North of Korea on the armistice. And one of them was USS Pueblo, and I believe it was 1972, maybe 73.
68.
Where 68, that shows my ignorance. In 1968, the North Koreans attacked the USS Pueblo. They took the crew hostage, brought it back into Pyongyang. And in fact, the Pueblo still sits there today. They released the crew, but they hold our ship. And they use it as propaganda to show the North Korean people that the North Korean military has superiority over the United States. It is entirely a propaganda tool. But we had sailors, and I don't say a lot of nice thing about Navy folks off that often, but these sailors fought and worked very hard to defend the Pueblo until there was just absolutely no other alternative than to give up the ship. And you have to respect these sailors. They fought in the true tradition of American service members to do their very best But in the end, they were overwhelmed. The North Koreans took this ship. They cut loose our sailors, but they hold that ship to this day right inside the middle of Pyongyang and use it as a propaganda tool to indoctrinate the North Korean people.
Yeah, that's they held 80 from what I read, they held 83 Americans hostage for like 11 months, tortured them, abused them, etc.
Absolutely.
And what's funny, not funny, but it's interesting the timing on that because I think it was right around the time of the Tet Offensive. It was right around the time that some North Korean commandos slipped into Seoul, killed like 24 South Koreans. They attacked the Blue House, I think, which is like the executive mansion.
It is. The Blue House is our equivalent of the White House. So they were trying to actually kill the president. It might have been the first President Park. But they were soundly defeated by the South Koreans. The South Koreans, they get their backup when the North Koreans come to town. And they literally wiped out the North Korean forces trying to take over the Blue House.
Yeah, and I bring that up simply for the fact that most Americans are completely unaware. A friend of our family's back in the late 70s, he was a young company grade officer along the DMZ, and he said, yeah, we'd be riding along the DMZ every now and then, and a couple of rounds would ricochet off the tank, and it was just like, hey, it's just another day at the DMZ. Gerald says, surprise.
It's
sorry, go ahead.
It's an incredible place. I remember when I was a captain at the Army Materiel Command, and I had a senior executive service officer, which is the civilian equivalent of a general. His name is Niels Byman, and Mr. Byman was the roommate of a young officer that was killed along the DMZ during the famous they were going down to trim a tree. It was a poplar tree, and his name was Captain Art Boniface. He led an American element to clear and cut down a poplar tree that resided right on the DMZ at checkpoint 3, I believe. And the North Koreans stormed out, and with axes, they attacked the South Koreans and the Americans, and they killed young Captain Art Boniface. It's just, I can't explain Korea, but they killed someone because they were simply trying to trim some branches from a tree. And then, when you tie that in with the Pueblo, you really see the erratic operations of the North Koreans to try and bully, and I don't use that word lightly. I really hate the word bully, but they really try and bully the rest of the world to do what they want them to do. And if you don't do what they want you to do, they're going to try and kill you. So it's a very real threat.
Yes, sir. TC says, Rich, weren't you aboard the Pueblo when it was captured? I was an able seaman. I believe you were a navigator, and that's how we ended up in North Korean waters. But that's a whole nother story. Let's see. Gerald says, surprised we don't target the ship and destroy it.
Well, I mean, it is right in the middle of North Korea. So if we did that, it would be, tipping off another major conflict.
And that's a great segue, though, Jay. I wanted to ask you, what, and again, please like and share. We've got some more questions, and this is one of the things that I remember before I get into the question. During the Clinton era, the U.S. position was it'll be generations before North Korea has a nuclear weapons capability. And we saw that was absolutely bunk. The intelligence was bad, or they were either lying to us. And they do have nuclear weapons. We invaded Iraq on the premise that they might have weapons of mass destruction. And here we know that North Korea does have pretty much everything and anything, I would imagine, Jay, you can correct me if I'm wrong, in their arsenal. And yet we're still tolerating their existence, I guess.
I don't know how to answer that one. There are people far greater pay grades ahead of mine. What I will say is the North Korea does in fact have nuclear weapons. No one is exactly sure how many they have, but they do in fact have nuclear weapons. They are working intently to develop the methods of delivery. And I think that's really all I'm comfortable sharing right now.
Yeah. Gordon is on. He says, good morning. Coin number 1688 from Ohio. Please check out AmericanWarriorSociety.com if you're interested in finding out more about that. Or if you're interested in checking out any of our sponsors like Precision Holsters. I'm wearing my Precision Holsters belt at this moment and use the Ultra Appendix holster as well as their competition line, which is absolutely new. Check out all of our sponsors on AmericanWarriorShow.com. I got another question for you, Jay. If there was war on the Korean Peninsula, or more specifically, war with North Korea, what would that look like?
My opinion, it would be devastating. There are at least a couple of thousand pieces of artillery arrayed against South Korea. I would estimate, again, my opinion, and I just want to be very clear: the opinions I state are my own, not the American government. But there would be many, many thousands of pieces of artillery unleashed against Seoul, followed by missile barrages. So, we must be prepared to fight through the fact that they are going to unleash the absolute best they can against us, especially in the earliest stages, to try and defeat the U.S. and South Korean will to fight. But I don't believe that's going to happen. I believe personally that should that happen, that will do nothing but bolster the American and South Korean will to fight and move through and defeat the North Korean population. But it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be simple. We are going to have to take a hit on the chin. We're going to have to take a bloody nose, and we're going to have to be committed to moving north and defeating the threat.
So for those watching this morning that maybe aren't familiar, what type of artillery do you have? We have 105, 155, and God knows what else in our arsenal. What is the those thousands of artillery pieces? What are they?
They've got 105, 155.
155?
They've got 240s, 105, 155, 240s, and multiple launch rocket systems. They will launch everything. They will throw the kitchen sink at us. But I really believe that the ROK U.S. alliance, as we work together, it is nothing that we can't deter. I spent the last 18 months of my life going on 2 years. I have a total of about 5.5 years out of the last 7 in Korea. Seen every aspect from tactical through strategic. The South Koreans are stubborn. They really are. South Koreans are stubborn people, and I mean that in the most positive way. They're going to throw the kitchen sink at us, but the South Koreans, with our U.S. partners, are going to work to counter that using superior air power, using superior naval power, and using an overwhelming ground force to move forward and counter whatever the North Koreans throw at us. I mean, that's what we're going to do.
When it comes to I want to again paint the picture for those that are watching this and maybe don't have the background that you do, Jay. When it comes to, let's say, 155, for example, can you give us an idea of what's the maximum effective range of that weapon?
I'll be on. I'm not going to lie. Don't make, as T.C. Fuller would say, don't make me lie to you. That's several thousand yards.
Yeah.
You can launch a 155 several thousand yards. We consider Seoul, where I live, as the Greater Seoul metropolitan area, the Gizmo. The focus of the North Korean barrage is going to be on the Gizmo. But we are much more than Gizmo. We have forces aligned along the DMZ that will be our first responders. So once we put them into action, then we have our naval forces that come into action. Then we also have the Air Force's action. We are not a one-dimensional force here. So you can launch all you want southward, but when you launch south, you're getting a ground response, a naval response, and an air response. If you remember the Sopranos, and I think the second year, where Uncle June tells Tony Soprano, if you come here, you better come heavy, meaning Tony better have a gun. That's our aspect. With the North Koreans, if you come here, you better come heavy, because the South Korean and the U.S. response, we're going to come heavy. We're going to come back at you with a solid, coordinated air attack, a solid, coordinated naval attack, and a solid, coordinated ground attack. And I think that would be my message to the North Koreans. They're probably listening to me right now as I'm transmitting out of South Korea. North Korea, you better come at us heavy, because we're going to come back at you.
Yeah, and that raises the potential for a question like what Gerald just asked. Wouldn't China supply them and or potentially attack us in that scenario?
In my opinion, yes, the Chinese have an interest in keeping North Korean forces there, because it's a solid boundary. The Chinese do not want us right up on their boundaries, so they have an interest in keeping the North Koreans between us. But I personally believe that at this point in time, the Chinese have more to win by maintaining this status quo. And I'm not sure that the China, again, my opinion, I'm not sure the Chinese have all that much to win by encouraging a conflict. I think they have more to win by keeping the status quo.
No, I totally agree with that. Economically, as well as many other
Absolutely.
ways,
Absolutely.
they don't want that to happen. William Province says, "I hope with the current political leadership, they won't bow down to the North Korean threat." I agree with
You
you.
know, I absolutely agree. I believe that right now, President Moon and the current South Korean, the current South Korean leadership, they are working extraordinarily hard to find the middle ground with North Korea. I personally believe that President Moon has a lot more faith in North Korea than I personally do, and I would hope that the South Korean government keep in mind that North Korea does not have South Korea's best interests in heart. But, you know, before Moon, we had several years of, you know, anti North Korean government. Uh, they were definitely anti North Korean. And I think that's probably the more right um, side of the coin. I just think we cannot trust North Korea until they make more concessions.
Yeah, and Donald is on this morning. I believe Donald was an artilleryman, and he says, from my old memory, a 105 artillery round would travel about 5 miles, a 155 millimeter artillery round, 12 to 18 miles conventionally, or 22 plus with a rocket assisted on it. So, again, you living there in Seoul are well within their artillery fan, I'm sure.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, Guile from the
That's why we moved. That's why we've moved a lot of forces south to Humphreys. It takes them out of artillery range, perhaps, but there's still missile range that we have to keep in mind.
Guy living in the Philippines says North Korea, China, they are all threats. Yeah. I want to ask you the next question is in regard to electromagnetic pulse. Are you up on that North Korean threat for EMP? Is there one for North Korea?
You kind of broke up. What was the question again?
Sure, Jay. The question was in regard to EMP attacks from North Korea. Is that a real threat?
Absolutely. An EMP threat. If there's a nuclear weapon detonated, there's absolutely an EMP threat. I can't and will not speak. Pardon me. I, I can't and want to speak to exactly what the EMP threat is, but absolutely, anytime you have a nuclear weapon detonation, there is in fact an EMP threat that is there. Um, and I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably the one that worries me. Uh, because what it would do to our grid, our banking, our economy, our infrastructure is probably in some ways far worse than actually blowing up a city.
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask you a question, Jay. One of the things that never really gets discussed is the elements of national power, and the way it was described to me as DIME, diplomacy, intelligence, military, and economic, those elements of national power. Um, Are we using all the elements correctly, in your humble opinion, toward destabilizing the North Korean regime?
I absolutely think so. When it comes to diplomacy, uh, I did 3 tours in Iraq. In my last tour in Iraq, I was dual-hatted. I worked as the chief of US Forces Iraq, J4 sustainment. My other hat was working with the State Department in developing their sustainment capabilities as we moved out of Iraq. In that capacity, I knew, I got to know what eventually became the Deputy Chief of Mission here in Korea, DCM Mark Napper. And Mark and I reconnected when I got here in Korea. And I can speak personally that I absolutely believe that the State Department has and is working every bit of diplomatic influence with North Korea that they possibly can. You know, Mark Napper, just an incredible diplomat. He served admirably after the former ambassador left and before Ambassador Harry Harris arrived under the Trump administration. Mark really sought to find common ground with the North Koreans. When you look at the information piece of it, I'm not sure that we can do anything better. We constantly ensure that North Korea understands, information wise, what we are capable of, not only as a country, but as a military alliance, we are able to do. Militarily, the same lines. We have clearly communicated. One of my privileges, you know, when I was in command here, was working with General Vinnie Brooks. And I got to tell you, you will not find a finer general officer than Vinnie Brooks. And getting to know General Brooks over my time in command, overlapping his time in command, where we worked together, General Brooks really communicated across the dime spectrum what we are able to do as an alliance. So I think across the entire dime spectrum, we have communicated as best as possible what we are able to do, not only as the United States, but in coordination with our ROK partners, to present a united front and ensure that North Korea knows that if they do the wrong thing, they will not only face off with South Korea, they'll face off with the United States as well as the United Nations.
Yeah. Good answer. Paul says, I worked with the good colonel. Remember cleaning up some North Korean leaflets on Knight's Field. Alan says, I'm sure you may remember that. Alan says, my problem is the current administration being chummy with China. They will be soft on North Korea and China. There will be more problems down the road. And I think that's probably a legit concern, Alan.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I'm staunchly conservative. I pray that President Biden and the current administration will understand what we truly face here, and will make the right decision. So that's all I can say about that.
Yeah. Jero says, good morning. Donald says, any thoughts on if the North Korean people would ever rise up if given the opportunity to gain their own freedom?
I would hope that would be the case. But as you read and understand what currently goes on in North Korea, they are such an oppressed population. It's hard, and truthfully, it's heartbreaking. You look at the way the average person lives in North Korea, and it is hard to understand that it is in fact 2021. It's like looking at people living in the 14 and 1500s. I would pray that they have the ability to do so, but at the moment, I'm just not sure.
Well, and the other, I think in America, there's this idea that, or maybe it's human nature that, oh, regime change is always good. And as we've seen with the Arab Spring or the overthrow of, any of these dictators, Sadat or Gaddafi, you name it, it doesn't always mean that we're going to get somebody better. So my fear is, if we
That's
could,
true.
if we can contain Kim Jong Un and keep him, from doing something stupid, it might be better than getting some other version of Kim Jong Un.
Well, it goes to the devil you know versus the devil you don't know. And yeah, it's just the most unique. Um, yeah, it's just very unique. Um, we look at yeah, uh, it's just an incredible situation. I wish I had an easy answer for that. I just don't.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to ask you, Jay, is sitting from where you are there and in and around the Seoul, Korea area, and you look at the unrest that went on in America over here during 2020 and even into 2021, what kind of message does that send to the North Korean regime when they look at that?
That's a very tough question. I'm not sure I can answer that. Um, I I think that no matter what, my opinion, I think no matter what, KJU is going to be very, very hesitant to act out. At least I hope.
What is the restraining mutually assured destruction strategy? Is escalation dominance as a strategy of strategic strategy of the United States government? Is that's what's currently keeping him in line?
You know, I'm trying to think of the term off the top of my head. Um, I think he's just kind of really in a wait or see mode. You know, I think he may perceive Biden as an unknown. So he may be trying to spend several weeks, several months trying to figure out how Biden thinks. I have no doubt with the Trump administration, um, had he really acted the fool too much, Trump probably would have absolutely executed a kinetic strike. Uh, and I really think that KJU is waiting to try and get enough information to judge what Biden will do.
Yeah, and on that, as a student of history, man, I just read a really good book about the Falkland Islands War, and the reason I bring that up is at the time, this is 1980, I believe it was late 1979, early 1980. The military dictatorship in Argentina saw the election of Margaret Thatcher in the United Kingdom as, you got a woman as a prime minister. This is going to be soft. She's not going to do anything. We'll just go ahead and seize this moment, seize the initiative, and take the Falkland Islands back.
Right.
Because they miscalculated her resolve. And I think there's some great historical precedents in modern time for people seeing someone like that, a weak leader, and going, yeah, you know what, this is probably our moment.
Yeah, but I think what they miscalculated with Miss Thatcher was she was the Iron Prime Minister. She was the female version of Reagan.
Yeah.
She was not going to back down. She would fist fight you in a second. And yeah, I think they might have miscalculated that.
Yeah, they did. I guess the point being that it's only in hindsight that we see her as the Iron Lady. I think
absolutely.
I think at the time they're like you said, Jay, they're kind of waiting and seeing what is this guy's resolve going to be. I think there is so much going on in Asia right now that no one is talking about. You're over there, Jay, and with India and China having a little skirmish there on the border, and then China launching a cyber attack on their power grid. Man, anything's possible right now. And of course, we're not talking about it here in the States. You have to search out this information.
Yeah, and it sounds bad. I'm getting ready to say what I'm about to say, but what's the old Chinese proverb? May you ever live in interesting times.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're in interesting times.
We are in interesting times, and I probably don't want to say too much, but a good friend who works in the cyber field, he got an email from China saying, "Hey, I read your white paper, man, and I really would like to get that algorithm you're using." And I told this friend of mine, because he reached out to a couple of PhDs he worked on the paper with, and said, "Hey, man, the PhDs were ready to cough up the algorithm." I said, "No. You need to bring the US cyber folks in on this." And he did. And next thing you know, the FBI is interviewing him and looking into it as a potential espionage attempt. So they are constantly out there testing us. And one of the things that this FBI agent said is they'll reach out to academics because academics don't necessarily know the true military application of what they're working on.
Absolutely. I simply hope that the FBI doesn't reach out to me after our talk. That's all I'm saying.
Well, TC's on here, and he's just sitting by and watching this conversation happen. But TC also says the Falklands. Yep. How about the Russians in Crimea? Yeah, absolutely.
TC is probably simply surprised that his once young lieutenant that he tried to raise up is able to speak upon strategic matters, because I put poor TC through the ringer, and there are so many stories that TC can probably tell you. So, poor TC.
TC says, TC says, I'll be calling you in a minute. I'm sure he wants to Mirandize you or something.
Yeah. TC and I have an interesting background. As a second lieutenant, I earned my EOD badge before TC did. And TC came out one day, and I think it was TC or Gordo Graham, which both were captains and outranked me as a second lieutenant. They said something to me, and I turned around and said, "Hey, I've got an EOD badge, so non-badge wearers should be quiet." And I think it was Gordo Graham, but TC was there, and TC about lost his mind. And then all of a sudden, 2 years later, TC is my commander. I'm like, man, I'm going to go down over this one.
Yeah.
I should have kept my mouth shut. But yeah.
Yeah, discretion, man, discretion.
Yeah, discretion is the better part of valor, and I did not realize that as soon.
That's what they say. Jay, I've kept you on.
But then when you look, TC Fuller, TC Fuller went on to an incredible career within the FBI. I truly feel that the Army lost out. If TC had stayed as an Army officer, TC would have truly positively impacted the United States Army. But just don't tell TC I said that.
TC's the Forrest Gump of our times, man. Jay, I've kept you on here for quite a while, my friend. I know it's late where you are there in Korea, so I definitely want to be respectful of your time. Any parting thoughts, anything we didn't talk about? I don't know how much you're up on the threat that Iran poses, but any other threats that should be on our radar screen, sir?
The time has passed quickly. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and your team, your audience. There's a lot of threats out there, and I definitely think Iran poses one of them. I would love to come back on in a few weeks and discuss this further. But I'm grateful just to be able to talk a little bit about my experience here in Korea, share a little bit of thoughts I have after 5.5, 6 years. I'm here. Love to come back on when you're ready for me. It's just been a great time, Rich, and thank you much. And I wish all the best to you and your audience.
Well, thank you, sir. I greatly appreciate that. Alan Kelly says, awesome show, great information. Jared says, be safe, everyone. TC says, great show, man. Always a pleasure. Donald says, great show. William says, yes, it's been a great show. Thank you. Tiny says, stay aware, stay prepared, Semper Fi. And yeah, we definitely need to get you back on the show, Jay, and let's open the aperture a little bit. Let's look outside of the Korean Peninsula and see what other threats are going on out there in the nuclear, biological, chemical realm. Thank you, sir, for coming on. Thank you for everyone that joined me this morning, man. And remember, stay safe because the fight is coming. Be ready.
Let me say one thing. I was attached to 2nd Marine in my first tour in Iraq. One of my heroes, Major General John Wessler, he's like, hey, Jay, do you have any great jokes? We would start the morning with a joke. So my joke was, hey, sir, what do Marines and bananas have in common? They start off green, turn yellow really fast, and die in bunches on the beach.
Oh.
So I'll leave you with that. Thank you. God bless you. And I look forward to speaking with you again soon.
God
Thanks,
bless, brother.
Rich.
Thanks, Jay.